Hey everyone, and welcome to another Radiant Earpiece. This is a series where we have some of our Radiant coaches over at SkillCapped.com talk to some of the SkillCapped members during their matches and attempt to help them fix their mistakes in real time. In this week's episode, Jaden is going to be helping out Hyped, who is currently a gold player who mains controller and initiator. This is our second episode in the series, and if you didn't already know, this is actually a series that we do over on the League of Legends channel as well. But something I'm immediately noticing when comparing Valorant to League is that it can be really difficult to do this sort of live coaching effectively in a game that is as punishing as Valorant. In Valorant, the slightest mistake can result in you immediately dying and watching from the sidelines for the rest of the round, which is really awesome because it actually gives us a lot of time to talk about the mistakes, but it also sort of sucks because sometimes it can be hard to reel players back and prevent them from getting themselves killed or their teammates killed. So what am I saying here? Well, what I'm saying is, so far within Radiant Earpiece, we haven't been able to get ourselves a win. And that's certainly not because of the coaches we have. In our last Radiant Earpiece, we had Padawan backseat our friend Sammy, and Padawan was previously a top 20 ranked player. But what I started to realize is that part of the reason it's so difficult to win in these sort of situations is because since Valorant is such a punishing game, this means that generally the best opportunities to learn are going to be from your mistakes. I'm sorry, this might be really confusing, so this is probably the best way to show you. Watch this clip, and I want you to pay attention to Hyped's movements and Jaden's audio.
Play Sage, Jed.
Probably group up with
terrible molly by me. Okay.
Damn. I think you had to fight there. You're already like pushed up and
I was pushed up way too much.
Yeah, you're already pushed up.
It was subtle, but did you hear that? Hyped was pathing onto site and immediately stopped to shoot a molly, and then afterwards didn't go to help his Jet. And this sort of abrupt thing sort of caught Jaden off guard, and that's why you'll hear him start to say, try to go and help your Jet, but he gets cut off because Jet ends up dying before he can even say it. What this tells me is that in the future commentaries, we need to be literally telling players what to do, even if we think they're already going to do it. This is also really cool to see how players think though, because it's very apparent that what Hyped saw on his map was this, and what Jaden saw on his map was this. Now, of course, the molly to stop the short push probably is a good idea, however, he does mess it up, but it's all of these little stutters and pauses that he makes throughout the round that causes him to not have enough time to reach the Jet and help her out. And because of that, his Jet ends up dying, and then he gets stuck alone on site and tries to run away, and if you've ever been in a situation like this where you catch yourself super overextended, you just need to know that the term overextended implies that you cannot fall back. At this point in time, Hyped is already on site. He's here, he can't turn around and run, he has to fight this out. And it would have been a lot easier to fight it out if he tried to help his Jet out in any way, maybe by spamming into the smoke to get the enemy's attention or literally anything, but it was too late to do that, so now he just needs to fight. But like we said, because of how punishing the game can be in the moment, it's oftentimes a lot better to learn after the mistake, so let's hear Jaden talk about it a little bit.
Just try to be aware of your minimap, because you saw that Jet, she was in the, like kind of in a smoke, or like in the smoke that you placed, and you kind of want to try to assist each other. So like if you see like your teammate kind of in front of you, or like there's a player in front of you that is kind of having first point of contact, you want to be the supporting player behind them and try to get the trade off. It's like playing backside and then playing on the left side where you could try to support Jet. I know she was in the smoke, but you could try to spray in the smoke. Yeah.
Notice how Jaden's commentary after this mistake doesn't change the fact that they lost the round. But hopefully it will help Hyped see the map the same way Jaden does, because like we said, it very much seems like many players have their eye on the enemies far more than they have it on their teammates. Oh, by the way, before we move on to the next round, if you wanted to catch Jaden's full commentary while coaching Hyped throughout this game, that's all available on our website, so be sure to go check that out. Yeah, let's get into the next round. So this was a major problem we noticed from Hyped, and I want you guys to once again watch this round and see if you can pick it out.
Grass. I'm playing back.
Yeah, probably rotate to garage here.
Are they? Oh, okay. I don't know why I stopped watching that.
Yeah.
Did you see it? This is a really common issue so many players have, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's just from watching those higher tier players with ADHD to the max, but notice how Hyped is constantly switching between his knife and his gun. Don't get me wrong, there are good times to switch to your knife to get that extra bit of movement, but it does not seem like Hyped is really considering that in the moment, and it's just sort of quick switching because it's fun. The funny thing is, Jaden is such a nice person that he was trying to be respectful with his commentary, as you can see.
I definitely think try to pull out your knife less.
If it were me, I would have been a lot more harsh on this point though, because this is seriously a bad habit that he had and it needs to be fixed. To be entirely frank, if you're somebody who has this problem, my advice is to never pull out your knife at all. I know you might have to rotate across the map sometimes and having your knife out might be faster, but I can promise you if you never pull out your knife, you will never get caught with your knife out. Now, obviously don't do this for every game for the rest of your life, but maybe for a couple of games, practice never taking your knife out just as you might practice never crouching. A lot of this just comes down to awareness though, and like we said earlier, that awareness comes down to how Hyped sees the map versus how a player like Jaden sees the map. The more your game sense develops in Valorant, you start to get a better understanding of timings, and based off of those timings, you can determine when it is safe to pull out your knife and when it is not. You'll notice his Reyna dies in Garage at 136 seconds, so how long exactly does he have until this Reyna is able to push through Garage? Well, let's go figure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He has around 9 seconds until somebody can peek through Garage window. Now, it doesn't end up being the Reyna in this situation, it's the enemy Jet, but you guys get the point. And of course, this can vary more or less depending on utility used. Maybe it's movement utility like satchels or dashes, or if they have their knife out, but you guys get the point. Around 9 seconds is the time frame that he really needs to be careful in this area. Not only that, but the Sky ulti came down middle, and he never really actually peeked mid to see if anybody was there beforehand, but he is still in fact pulling out his knife when he's looking mid. So how much time after the barriers come up does he have until he can be peeked here? Well, let's figure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has around 5 seconds until somebody can see him from this angle that he's pulling out his knife at. Now, notice how both of these time frames are long overdue by the time that he's pulling out his knife, but it doesn't seem like he really respects this. It very much feels like Hyped sees the map like this, and Jaden sees the map like this. These two things are both huge differences in perspective, and you'll notice how in Jaden's case, he's constantly thinking about where enemies are and where he could be peeked from, and it seems like in Hyped's case, he's mostly concerned with what's currently on his screen and what he's hearing. And this plays into a larger issue, which has to do with the way that Hyped handles his crosshair placement throughout the game. You'll notice there are actually 2 moments in this round where his crosshair is sort of just floating in a wall, and if you're pre-aiming a location that you're about to peek, this is sometimes okay, but you need to be about to actually peek that location because otherwise this is going to end up getting you destroyed like it did here. Again, a lot of this just comes down to awareness, but if you're not about to peek, there's no reason for your crosshair to be floating in a wall like this. Although we weren't able to save him in this moment, let's take a look at the exercise that they did after the round to try and fix this bad habit though.
And also crosshair placement. I want you to try to place your crosshair. It's hard without me showing you, but I want you to try to smooth around your corners. So like, I want you to follow around your corners no matter where you are. Like kind of place your crosshair where you see a corner, right? Wherever.
So like, are you talking about like pre-aiming or like, okay, let me try it on this one.
Yeah.
So like,
okay, so let's say you're watching this. Yeah, exactly. So you're following around that corner. Exactly. So anywhere you're going, I want you to practice this because sometimes your crosshair placement, even though like for that dog situation, if you were doing that, you would have been prepared for that fight, right?
This will hopefully help to build the habit of tracing corners, although like we said earlier, there are times when pre-aiming is appropriate. Similar to the knife thing that we talked about earlier, if you are having a problem of consistently making mistakes, sometimes it's best to remove all other factors and just focus on the one thing. So rather than trying to teach them when it's appropriate to do what action, instead it's best to just teach a person to always do one thing until they master that, and then start throwing in other factors. Let's take a look at one more round from the game though and talk about something that many people don't understand about Valorant, and that has to do with, first of all, Hyped's lack of utility usage, but also how enemies function in matchmaking. You'll notice how Hyped is actually going to lose this round, which was incredibly close, and it's a massive bummer when your team is down by this much to lose pistol round. But he also had a molly the entire round and never really used it. That molly costs 250 credits, and they can be really expensive on pistol rounds, so you need to be sure to use it to slow down the enemy's retake. But the other thing I wanted to comment about is that what seems like the logical conclusion for the enemy team is that when Hyped uses his molly, they just wait it out and then they go for the retake afterwards, right? Well, that makes a lot of sense. However, what is generally going to happen with communication and matchmaking is this Omen is going to get mollied and back up to wait it out, but he's never going to communicate to the Jet that he got mollied, so she's going to try to jump out of heaven when nobody can help her, and then she will die, and then the Omen will be in a 1v3. Notice how this Omen swings out and kills his Sage before he ever really gets to help her, and then although he does get a clean kill onto the Jet, Omen is already out onto site. Like I said before, if he mollies this Omen first, I guarantee the Jet jumps out of heaven without a word being said and gets herself killed. And if she doesn't, at the very least he stalled out this post plant more so that there's no longer any smoke on A long and this Jett has less time to stall the Omen on the defuse. But anyway, that's just some of the things that we talked about with Hyped today, and if you wanted to catch the full VOD with all of Jaden's commentary, as well as the recap after the game, be sure to check that out at skillcapped.com, link in the description below. Like I said though, one of the big things that we really learned from this is how proactive we have to be with our back seating. If we just make the assumption that a player is thinking about the same things that we are when we're trying to give them live coaching, it's going to result in a lot of bad plays when they realize that they never really were on the same page. That means sometimes we're going to have to say things like, hey, try to go help your Jett towards long when you get on site, or maybe things such as being a little bit harsher on the bad habits that we picked up on throughout the game. Overall though, I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and we hope that you were able to come out of it learning something new. As always, my name is King, and we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.